All right, so he starts off with a bunch of guys ranking 50 to 31. Let's get through this part quickly. Now, he opens up with Steven Matz at number 50, having the best year out of the 4-year contract he signed with the Cardinals, pitching out of the bullpen, having a good year, 2.34 on the FIP. Now, with the Cardinals, they are in contention, but they also have one eye on the future because they are going through some transition in the front office. So I could see a situation where they try to bring back some value and clear the rest of his salary for the remainder of the year. But he's pitching so well, I could see the Cardinals just hanging on to him. Now, Dennis Santana at number 49. I could definitely see the Pirates moving him. They stink. They need to find a way to get some bats in the organization, and he's got one more year of control on top of having a very good year this year, ERA at 1.62. Now, with the Diamondbacks, they're kind of hanging around right now. Are they going to be buyers? Are they going to be sellers? But Shelby Miller is having a great year for the first time in a long time, ERA at 2.03 out of the bullpen. Teams always need bullpen help, so if the Diamondbacks get an offer they can't refuse, I could see them moving him and still trying to compete in the second half, but the bullpen's been so bad, it would be rough to lose Shelby Miller. Now, Yoan Moncada, I've talked about him in the past as well. He has been productive when healthy, but that's been an issue for Moncada this year. And the Angels, they are still hanging around in the mix, but I could see a situation where they move Moncada because they got Luis Rengifo. They called up Christian Moore recently, so I could see them moving Moncada, getting back some value, and going with those two guys instead. Emilio Pagan with the Reds. The Reds, they're kind of hanging around right now too. Pagan stepped into the closer role not too long ago. He's been pretty solid for the most part. He's got one more year on his contract, and with the Reds, they're more of a small market team, so would they look to clear his salary? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, he's got Phil Maton at number 45, also having a great year out of the Cardinals bullpen, ERA at 1.84, but the difference with him and Steven Matz is he's a lot cheaper on a one-year, $2 million deal, so I could see a situation where the Cardinals could just hang on to him because he is so cheap, but then again, you could get back maybe even more value because he is going to cost less than someone like Steven Matz. At 44, he's got Tomoyuki Sagano, came over from Japan this past offseason on a one-year deal. He's got a solid ERA at a 3.55, but I don't like the FIP at a 4.81. He is prone to the home run ball, so maybe a team in a pitcher-friendly park could be a good fit for him, like the San Diego Padres, who could use some more innings in the second half. But the Orioles are out of it. I definitely see Sagano getting moved. He's got Michael Soroka ahead of him. I would actually have Sagano ahead of him. Soroka just hasn't been very good this series on a one-year, $9 million deal, ERA at a 5.06. So I'm not sure what teams would be interested in him. Maybe for the bullpen, he's got Chris Martin here. Now, I could see Chris Martin being higher on this list, but with the Rangers, Chris Young, they always want to compete. He signed with the Rangers, because he's getting towards the end of his career, so he's closer to home. So I don't know. I don't see the Rangers moving Chris Martin, to be honest with you. And he's got Kyle Finnegan ahead of him. I would actually have Kyle Finnegan way higher on this list. The Nationals aren't really in contention, and he's having himself a good year, one of the top closers in the game. He's got a good amount of saves. And finishing up the 40s, he's got IKF. He's in the final year of a 2-year contract, having a decent year with the bat, hitting 276 with a 322 on base. He's going to give you some decent contact as well. Pretty solid defense at shortstop. He can play other positions as well. I don't see why the Pirates would hang on to him. They need to start looking towards next year. And with IKF, he could definitely help out some teams out there looking for another guy off the bench or some more positional depth. Starting off in the 30s, he's got Luis Urias at 39. He's having a pretty decent year at the plate. He has a solid on base at 339. He's got a little pop as well, 110 WRC plus. Not great defensively, but a team that could use some more depth in the infield. I could see them going after him. Now you got Jake Bird at 38. Now with Jake Bird, he's having a great year. And with Bird, he has a ton of control left. With the Rockies, they already have a tough time finding pitching as it is. I really don't see them moving him. The Rockies don't really move guys at the deadline anyway. You got Jesus Sanchez up next. He's hitting righties pretty well this year. He's got a 102 WRC plus overall, but it's better against right-handed pitching. So a team in need of a left-handed bat, say maybe the Houston Astros, they could use a little bit more pop in the lineup with Yordan Alvarez. I think that could be a pretty good fit. Now you got Ramon Urias up next. I could see the Orioles just hanging on to him because he has one more year of control. He can play multiple positions. So I can see the Orioles just keeping him. He's got Tyler Anderson up next. Now with Anderson, he's going to be a solid veteran guy that can give you some innings at the back of the rotation. But the problem is the numbers just aren't very good. 4.56 ERA, FIP at a 5.14. He's in the last year of his contract. He's making $13 million a year, but will teams want to pay that? Now he's got Zach Littell up next. ERA looks pretty good at a 3.78, but the FIP is at a 5.14. The reason for that, he's giving up a lot of home runs, 2 home runs per 9. So he is cheap. Maybe a team at a pitcher-friendly park, like I said, with Tomoyuki Sagano, could be a good fit. But with the Rays, they're in contention right now, but I could see a situation where they use him as a soft sell candidate where they're always looking towards the future. future. Up next, he's got Rhys Hoskins. Now, a couple of things come into play here. One being the Brewers are in contention. They're trying to compete every single year, and he is having a good year with a 340 on base, a 115 WRC plus, 439 on the slugging. But the problem is he's making a lot of money. 2-year, $34 million deal, $17 million per year, has a mutual option for next year. And these numbers, while they are good, they're not top first baseman kind of numbers. So the value that he's putting on the field isn't really living up to what he's getting paid. So I think they would have to eat some of the contract here to get back value in return. But with the Brewers, they are always looking to the future because they are a small market team. So maybe they could try to move him and try to have some guys within the organization fill first base. But I think they would have to eat some of the contract or pair him with another guy of higher value, say Freddie Peralta, for instance. But I think with the Brewers, they probably just end up hanging on to him. At 32, he's got Eber Cabrera, who I think is flying under the radar this year for the Marlins. ERA at a 3.81, FIP at a 3.91 over 12 starts. He looks healthy. The command is better this year. The walks are down this year compared to the last couple of years. Now, with Cabrera, he's got a lot of control after the series. He's not a free agent until after 2028, so he's definitely going to cost something. I could see this going either way. The Marlins hanging on to him to keep him in the rotation for the next couple of years, or if a team is really looking for some pitching, maybe throwing something at the Marlins, who are trying to get more bats within the organization. At 31, he's got Andrew Heaney, who's having a decent year. ERA at a 3.94, FIP a little bit higher, but a team looking for a veteran guy for the back end of the rotation, maybe a long relief guy. I could definitely see them making a phone call to the Pirates here. There's no reason for the Pirates to hang on to him. He's on a cheap 1-year, $5 million deal at 34 years old. They need to try and use him to get back a bat within the organization. At number 30, he has Eric Fetty, who was traded last deadline to the Cardinals from the White Sox in the 3-team trade with the Dodgers. Now, like I said earlier, it comes down to what the Cardinals want to do here, but I could see them maybe moving him. Now, at this point, he's more of a back-end rotation arm since his strikeouts are down, his walks are up, but he's not giving up a lot of home runs. So I could see them looking to get value back since teams are always looking for starting pitching, and he is going to be a free agent soon. And then they can call someone up like the number 9 prospect, Michael McGreevy, to take his place. At 29, he has Nick Martinez, and he's making over $20 million this year before he hits free agency, so a team would be willing to have to absorb the rest of that, and he has been struggling as of late. ERA is up to a 4.40. It was in the 3s not too long ago, but he is a flexible arm. He can pitch in the rotation, out of the bullpen, whatever it may be. Now, he lists a few teams that would be the best fits: the Astros, Padres, Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. Out of all those teams, though, I would say the Dodgers would be the best fit because of his flexibility. They're having a lot of injuries in the rotation this year, but once those guys come back, then he could just go to the bullpen. Now, another thing Passan has here is chance of trade, and he gives it a 65% chance of happening. I think that's a little too high. I already mentioned the amount of money that he's making, and the Reds are in contention right now, so I don't see why the Reds would want to give up someone like him who is valuable to the entire pitching staff. I would say more likely anywhere from 20 to 30% is more realistic. At 28, he is Walker Buehler. Now, he bet on himself this past offseason after closing out the World Series, but this year, outside of a few good starts, he's really struggled for the most part. ERA to 6.29, FIP at a 5.75, and he's also making over $20 million. So I don't know what team out there would want to pay that kind of money for this kind of production, unless the Red Sox ate some of the remaining salary for this year or attached him to a player of higher value. Now, some teams out there that I think could be a good fit, he does list the Dodgers, where they are familiar with him. Maybe they could take him back in some kind of a trade. Maybe the Detroit Tigers, where Chris Fetter, one of the best pitching coaches in the game, could maybe help him get back on track, and they have more of a pitcher-friendly park. Maybe the Chicago Cubs, where they have good pitching development over there, and that is more of a pitcher-friendly park as well. Now, Passan, at this point, gives it a 35% chance of happening. Now, for the Red Sox, they want to compete. I feel like they're probably leaning more towards just trying to get him back on track. So I'll go a little lower than that. But if the Red Sox start falling out of it, I think they'll try to get him moved. At 27, he is Reed Detmers. Now, as of right now, the Angels are hanging around in the wild card race, so it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing at the deadline. Now, with Detmers, he has had his struggles as a starter up to this point, but he's been a lot better out of the bullpen. Now, ERA does look a little high at a 4.50, but the FIP is a lot better at 2.76. He's getting a good amount of strikeouts. He's keeping the ball in the yard as well. So it looks like, at least as of right now, the bullpen is a better home for him. And he does have a lot of control control left. He's not a free agent until after the 2028 season, so there is value there. It would cost quite a bit to land him. Now, some fits here for Reid Detmers that he lists. He has the Mets, the Diamondbacks, the Orioles, the Cardinals, the Twins, the Yankees. To me, I'm looking at some teams that really could use some bullpen help, especially from the left side. The two teams that come to mind would be the Yankees, but I'll also throw in the Tigers as well. And with Chris Fetter, hey, great pitching coach. Maybe they can get him back on track and he can be in the rotation down the road. Now, he gives a trade a 15% chance of happening, and I agree. I would actually even go a little lower than that. With the Angels, they've had those struggles with pitching in the past, and since he has a lot of control left and he's doing well, I have a hard time seeing the Angels giving him up. At 26, he has Adolis Garcia. Now, I mentioned earlier the Rangers and Chris Young don't really like to sell, but in this case, with their offense having issues, I could see them going a couple of different ways here. One being they try to move Garcia because he has struggled this year, but he does have power and he does have another year of control, so maybe they could find a taker and try to bring in another bat somewhere, say Marcell Ozuna, who I think would be a perfect fit in this lineup, or they can go with a younger option like prospect Dustin Harris down in the minor leagues right now. The other option would be to just keep him, try to get him back on track because, hey, the Rangers, they have struggled this year. They know the track record with Garcia, so maybe that might be the best course of action. Now, when it comes to a chance of a trade happening, he gives it an 80% chance. I think that's really high as of right now. I'm going to go more 50-50 at this point. At 25, he has Zach Eflin, who he gives a 75% chance of getting traded, which is less than what he gave Adolis Garcia. Now, with Eflin, I understand the struggles that he's had this year. ERA at 5.46, FIP a little bit higher, just got pounded by the Yankees recently. But with Eflin, he's in the last year of his contract. The Orioles are out of it, and he does have a good track record. He throws a lot of strikes. He limits the walks. Now, the teams that he lists as the best fits are the Astros, Padres, Cubs, and the Braves. Now, I could see some teams out there that need to limit the walks, like the Dodgers or the Mets possibly, but I could also see some teams with pitcher-friendly parks, like the Padres. They could use another starter as well. The Cubs, they've had some injuries this year. So with Eflin, I do think he is going to get moved. I'm going to go a little higher here than 75%. I'll go somewhere between 80 and 90%. At 24, he has Tyler Mahle, and like I said earlier, the Rangers and Chris Young don't want to sell, but I think you could make the argument to move Mahle and still try to compete. Now, he's hitting free agency soon, and he's having a good year here, ERA at 3.16. Now, he is having some issues with the shoulder as of right now, so let's see what ends up happening with that. But the Rangers do have a lot of good starting pitching. Jacob deGrom has been great this year. Nathan Eovaldi's having a good year. He's going to be back off the IL soon. And a couple of younger arms like Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, and even Patrick Corbin's been a nice surprise this year. Now, Passan gives it a 30% chance of happening, and I think I'm right there as well. Again, he's having the shoulder issues, and the Rangers don't really want to sell, but I think there is an argument to move him. At 23 is Ryan Helsley. Now, earlier I talked about Steven Matz and Phil Maton, but what I could actually see the Cardinals doing instead of moving one of those two is moving Ryan Helsley, who's going into free agency soon. But the difference with Helsley compared to Maton or Matz, who are also entering free agency soon, is he's the higher upside arm with a better track record. He could definitely bring back a better return. Now, Passan gives it a 30% chance of happening, but I think I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to go around 50 to 60%. Now, the teams that he mentions are the Dodgers, the Phillies, Diamondbacks, Yankees, and the Tigers. I definitely think the Tigers and the Phillies make a lot of sense here. They need upgrades in their bullpen, and they could use more velo as well. At 22, he is Luis Severino. Now, this one was a bit surprising to me since they just signed him this past offseason, but after thinking about it, I do see the logic a little bit. He is costing the A's a lot of money, over $20 million per year. They're out of contention, and let's be honest, the A's had to sign someone this past offseason because the Players Union were going to file a grievance against the A's if they didn't sign anyone. And of course, they could just keep him because I don't think the A's are that far off, and they need the pitching over the next couple of seasons to help them get back into contention. Now, with Severino, he did get hit hard in his last start against the Tigers, gave up 7 runs. ERA is up to a 4.83, doesn't look all that good, but the FIP still is looking all right at a 3.99. He pitched well with the Mets last year. So if a team were to go after Severino, I think there's a couple of options. I think the Dodgers, with all the payroll flexibility they have, they could do some more pitching with the injuries they've had. Or maybe even the Blue Jays, a team that has money, and they've had issues in the past trying to land talent. They've had to scratch and claw in free agency to land guys, or maybe the Mets would just take him back. Overall, though, I'm going to say a 25% chance of him getting traded, maybe even a little lower than that. And with Passan, he gives it a 40% chance of happening. I think that's a little high. At 21, he is Nolan Arenado. Back to this again, shall we? He was all over the rumor mill this past offseason, but ended up staying put in St. Louis. Now, defense still looks very good at third base, still has a good strikeout rate, but the walks are down, the power's down, only has a 399 in the slugging and 96 WRC plus, and he's owed a lot of money over the next couple of years. As of right now, Passan gives him a 30% chance of getting traded, but I would go even lower than that because of the reasons I just mentioned, along with the fact that I wonder what teams out there would even want him. You got the Yankees, but DJ LeMahieu, who has been playing better as of late. He does mention the Tigers, but they got a lot of position players that are stepping up for them this year, and he does mention the Mariners. I think you could see a fit there. That would be an upgrade at third base, but would they be willing to absorb the rest of his contract? Finishing off the 20s, he is Taylor Ward. He's hitting for a bunch of power again from the right side, which I know a lot of teams would love to have. 19 homers, a 466 on the slugging, and has another year of control after this year until free agency. I think it just comes down to what do the Angels want to do when it comes to the trade deadline this year. If they are more than a few games back at the time, I say they should move him, but if they're within a few games, I could see them just hanging on to him. Now, as of right now, Passan gives it a 45% chance of happening. I think that sounds right, kind of somewhere in the middle. Now, he does mention the Padres, Phillies, Guardians, Mariners, Giants, the Royals. Out of these teams that he lists, I would say the Padres would be a good fit. They need something out in left field. The Phillies, they could use another right-handed bat over there. Brandon Marsh hasn't really been getting it done. I think the Royals, they absolutely need an upgrade when it comes to the outfield. So I'll say wait and see on Taylor Ward right now. Into the teams we go, and is Luis Robert at 19. First off, I would put him higher on this list because I think it's pretty much a slam dunk that he ends up getting moved, and Passan does agree, gives it a 90% chance of happening, but the one thing holding that back a little bit is he is struggling offensively. OPS under 600, WRC plus at a 63, only hitting 185, but he is healthy this year. He's played 72 games so far. The athleticism is still off the charts. Great defense in center field, over 20 stolen bases, and the bat speed's still looking good, so I wonder if a change of scenery could do him some good. He mentions the Padres. I think that would be a great fit. He is a center fielder, but they have a need out in left field. Very spacious out there at Petco Park. He could cover a lot of ground out there, and they just did a lot of good for his former teammate Gavin Sheets, so maybe they can get him back on track as well. The Phillies, it feels like they've been connected with Luis Robert forever now. They could use another right-handed bat, and the Mets, I like that as well. They could use an everyday option out in center field. At 18, he has Aroldis Chapman. Now, this one's interesting as a Red Sox fan because he's been so good this year. ERA at a 1.36, FIP at a 1.87. He's on track for the best season of his career since 2019. Still striking out a lot of batters, but the walks are way down this year. Having a great season, 14 saves as well. But honestly, I have a hard time seeing the Red Sox moving him. He's on a one-year deal, so you definitely could make the argument that he'd be good, as a rental pickup for another team out there. But the Red Sox, they want to compete, so I could definitely see them just hanging on to him. But then on the other hand, they got a lot of other guys that maybe could step up into that role. They just brought in Jordan Hicks in the Rafi Devers trade. Justin Slayton's going to be coming back soon, so maybe the Red Sox see this as a chance, as like a soft sell where they can move him, bring back some talent, and then have someone else step into the closer role. Now, Craig Breslow has been bold when it comes to making trades, so I'll definitely leave open the possibility. Now, he gives it a 35% chance of happening. I think I'm right around there as well. Maybe he could even go a little bit higher. And he mentions the Mets, the Phillies, and the Tigers. I've already talked about the Phillies and the Tigers. They need more velo in that bullpen. I think it'd be a great fit for one of those teams. At 17, he has Pete Fairbanks. This is kind of like Aroldis Chapman here, but I could see this being more likely because it is the Rays, where they have one eye on the present and one eye on the future as well, where the Red Sox, they are a big market team and they're trying to compete. So I could see it being more likely that the Red Sox hang on to Chapman, but the Rays end up moving Pete Fairbanks. Now, he gives it a 60% chance of happening, and I'm right around there as well, maybe even a little bit higher, because the Rays do have other arms in the bullpen and within the organization. He mentions the Dodgers, Phillies, Tigers, Braves, D-backs, and the Rangers. I've already mentioned the Phillies and the Tigers. They really need to bolster the bullpen. Pete Fairbanks has good velo. He would definitely be an upgrade for one of those teams. At 16, he is Ryan McMahon at a 60% chance of getting traded, but I have a hard time seeing this happening. He's owed over $30 million over the rest of his contract that runs through 2027, and he's not very good away from cores, so I wonder if a team out there would be willing to take a chance on him. And he's kind of the face of the franchise to the Rockies at this point, and they still got to sell tickets, so I don't know if the Rockies would really want to move him. They never want to move anyone at the deadline. But if there were a team out there that can make an upgrade at third base, he does mention a few. He's got the Yankees, Tigers, Brewers. He's got the Twins, the Mariners. I can see the Mariners being a good fit. Now, he would be an upgrade for them at third base. He would give them good defense as well. He has versatility to play other positions, but I just don't see him getting moved. At 15, he has Cedric Mullins, and he has him at a 70% chance of getting traded. To be honest, I think it's going to be closer to 100%. Like I've said, the Orioles are out of it. There's no reason to hang on to him at this point, and they have guys looking for playing time over the next couple of years, like Heston Kjerstad, Tyler O'Neill still under contract, and maybe even their first round pick from a couple of years ago, Enrique Bradfield Jr., could end up getting a chance at some point. Now, with Mullins, he's going to bring you some decent pop, some speed as well, pretty good defense in the outfield. There's a lot of teams that I think would be a good fit. Now, he mentions the Phillies, the Guardians, the Mets. I'll even throw the Royals in there as well because they really need some offense, especially in the outfield. Sticking with the Orioles at 14, he is Felix Bautista. Now, he just came back from Tommy John this season, and he's looking very good. ERA at 2.60, 16 saves, but still has a couple more years of control, and the Orioles are going to want to get back into contention next year. So I have a hard time seeing the Orioles moving him, and Passan agrees. He gives it a 15% chance. I would even go lower than that, maybe like 5%, but if a team was to maybe pull it off, I could see the Dodgers, like he mentions, the Phillies, the Tigers. I've already mentioned them. He puts the Braves, D-backs, and the Rangers as well, but in the end, I don't see him getting traded. On to lucky number 13 with Emmanuel Clase. Now, I've only recently seen this suggestion of trading Clase, and I still think it's crazy, but like I've said a couple of times already, a small market team like the Guardians always keep one eye on the future. Now, with Clase, he's not looking like his past self all that much, but he's still having a good year. ERA at 3.48, FIP at 2.54, good amount of saves at 18, and he is on a team-friendly deal with club options that run through 2028, so there's still value there, obviously because he's pitching well, and he's not really all that expensive, so he would bring back a lot for the Guardians if they were to go that route, and they do have Cade Smith in the bullpen, who's been nasty this year, having a great year out of their bullpen, so they can just move him to the closer role. Now, Passan does give it a 20% chance of happening, and I think I'm right at that number as well, but I could see the argument for it being higher because his salary is only going to increase after this coming year. The numbers have dipped a little bit, so maybe the Guardians see that maybe this is a sell high opportunity, and teams are going to be aggressive out there looking for bullpen help. He has been connected with the Dodgers in the past. He does list the Dodgers here, as well as the Phillies. I think he would be a great fit there too. Sticking with closers here at number 12, he is Yohan Duran from the Twins, and he actually gives this a higher percent chance of happening than Clase at 40%. I think that is because Yohan Duran is going to be a lot cheaper than Clase is in his arbitration years, but I could also see the argument from the Twins' point of view because he is cheap and very good, ERA at 1.78, where they just want to hang on to him for the next couple of years. Of course, because he is good and he is cheap, teams might get aggressive making phone calls. So teams that I've already mentioned that could use some bullpen help, maybe the Phillies, maybe the Yankees, maybe even the Dodgers could go after. At number 11, he is Marcell Ozuna with a 25% chance of getting moved. Now, this one's interesting because we have no idea what the Braves are going to do at the deadline. It's been a disappointing season for them, but they have been playing a lot better as of late, and they are within 6 games of a wild card spot. But then again, Chris Sale just got hurt. What's going to happen with him? You just have no idea what the Braves are going to do here. Now, with Marcell Ozuna, he would definitely help out a lot of lineups out there, and he is in the last year of his contract, so maybe you could see a situation where the Braves look into moving him, and then they try to have some other bats step up for them. Say, you could do Sean Murphy, Drake Baldwin, sharing catcher and DH. Maybe you could do something like that. But with Marcell Ozuna, again, being in the last year of his contract, maybe some teams out there would be interested in a rental. And with the Braves, you got to remember, their farm system's not looking all that strong. Coming into the year, they're in the bottom 5, according to Baseball America, when it came to the farm system rankings. So maybe the Braves can do some kind of a soft sell here. Now, for the best fits, he mentions the Padres, the Mariners, the Tigers, the Royals, the Giants, the Guardians, and the Red Sox. Now, to me, I think the Rangers would make the most sense. They really need another bat. They have some flexibility with DH there. I think the Padres could make some sense, get one more bat into that lineup. I don't think the Red Sox make all that much sense. I know they just traded Raffy, but they want flexibility at the DH spot. Into the top 10 we go, and he starts off with Ryan O'Hearn. And honestly, I would have him in the top 5 on this list. He's having a great year with an OPS at almost 900. I think it's pretty much guaranteed that he ends up getting moved because he's going to be a free agent soon. And like I've already said, the Orioles are out of it. Now, when it comes to his percent chance of getting moved, he has it at an 85%, but I'm going to go 100% here. I don't think there's any way he stays with the Orioles at this point, especially when Kobe Mayo is looking for playing time. For the best fits, he mentions the Mariners, the Red Sox, the Giants, and the Rangers. I think the Mariners make a ton of sense. They just DFA'd Rowdy Tellez not too long ago. They could use an upgrade at first base. The Red Sox, since Tristan Casas went down, they've been going with a platoon of Romy Gonzalez and Abraham Toro. So if they wanted an everyday option, maybe O'Hearn could be the answer. I like the Rangers. They could use another bat. They could use him at first base or maybe put him in the outfield. I'll also throw the Astros in there as well. They could use another bat in their lineup with Yordan Alvarez out. At number 9 is Josh Naylor with a 30% chance of getting moved. Now, the D-backs are interesting because they've underperformed all season up to this point. They lost Corbin Burns for the year due to Tommy John, and now Corbin Carroll is out indefinitely with a wrist fracture. Who knows when he's going to come back? Now, they are within a few games of a wild card spot, but it's starting not to look all that great here in Arizona. Now, for Josh Naylor, he is having himself a good year, has a 127 WRC+, 467 on the slugging, so he would definitely help out a lot of teams out there looking for some more thump in the lineup. Now, the question is, will the D-backs sell? Well, I think you got to wait a few more weeks to see where they're at in the standings. They still have a lot of talent on this team to help them turn things around, but if they do fall out of it, I definitely think this 30% chance of Naylor getting moved is definitely going to go up. And out of the 4 teams here that he mentions, the Mariners, the Red Sox, Giants, and the Rangers, I think the Mariners make a lot of sense. The Rangers make a lot of sense. Now, the Red Sox, if they can get things turned around, he could be an everyday option for their lineup at first base. They've had a lot of strikeouts this year. Naylor doesn't strike out all that much. He would definitely help that. At number 8, he has another Diamondbacks player with Merrill Kelly. Now, same thing with Josh Naylor. Let's see what the Diamondbacks are at in the standings come the trade deadline. But I think there's even more reason to hang on to Merrill Kelly here, especially with Corbin Burns out for the year, despite going into free agency soon. So if they're in contention, there's no way they move Kelly. But if they do fall out of it, I think you should move him. He's having a solid year, ERA at a 3.39, FIP at a 3.32, has a very good track record. He would help out a lot of teams out there. Now, with Merrill Kelly, he is more of a ground ball guy, so I think a team with a good infield defense would make a lot of sense. I think the Chicago Cubs could make some sense. They could use another pitcher there. I think the Blue Jays could make some sense. They're in the wild card hunt, and they have a very good infield. I'd also throw in the Red Sox there, despite their shaky infield defense this year, because they just moved rookie Marcelo Meyer over to second base. He's been very good defensively. Alex Bregman's going to be back soon at third base. Trevor Story's solid for the most part at short, and they need another option behind Garrett Crochet. At number 7, we have another Diamondbacks pitcher in Zach Gallen. Now, for this one, he also gives it a 30% chance of happening, but I would actually go less than that, even if the Diamondbacks fall out of it, because he's not having a good year. ERA at a 5.60, FIP at a 5.02. So I could actually just see the D-backs hanging on to him and then maybe extending him a qualifying offer in the offseason. And if he ends up taking a long-term deal, they'll get a draft pick back for him. But if they were to move him, I could see the Tigers with Chris Fetter. Maybe they could help him get back on track, or maybe the Yankees with Matt Blake could help him out too. At number 6 is Seth Lugo. Now, here's a name that I haven't seen yet being mentioned as a possible trade candidate or even thought about up to this point. But after seeing it, I think it could make some sense. Even if the Royals are still in contention, since they've had Chris Bubic break out this year, Noah Cameron's had a good rookie season so far, so maybe Lugo could be expendable. He's also in the final year of his contract with a player option for next year, which I do think he's going to turn down to try and get one more contract at age 36. So maybe the Royals try to cash in now while they can. As of right now, Passan gives it a 40% chance of happening, but then again, Cole Reagans is having issues with the shoulder right now, and with the Royals still within range of a wild card spot, I'd say there's a better chance he ends up staying put. Now, if he were to get traded, I think a team that has had success with breaking balls like Lugo has this year could make some sense, like the Yankees, Padres, or even the Blue Jays. At number 5, let's get back to another Diamondback, Eugenio Suarez. Now, with Suarez, he's been one of the best power hitters in the game with 25 homers, has a 569 on the slugging, but he is in the last year of his contract, and they do have Jordan Lawler waiting in the wings down at AAA. Again, though, this comes down to whether or not the D-backs want to sell, but if they do, he mentions a few teams here. I think the Cubs would be a great fit because they only rank 29th in third base production on the year. The Yankees, if they think DJ LeMahieu is not going to be the answer for them this year, then he would definitely be an upgrade at third base, and he also also puts the Tigers here. Now, earlier, I said I didn't think Arenado would be a great fit for them because he's not really much of an upgrade offensively there, but Suarez would definitely be an upgrade in Detroit and would give more protection to Torkelson in the lineup. At number 4, he has Freddie Peralta. Now, I've talked about Peralta in a couple of trade videos, and while it might sound crazy for the Brewers to trade him since they are in contention, I wonder if this could be a similar situation to when they traded Josh Hader a few years ago. Now, they're a small market team that tries to compete, but they have to focus on the future as well. Now, with Hader, he was a year away from free agency at the time, but they still moved him despite being in first place in the division because they had Devin Williams waiting in the wings. Now, with Peralta, he's also another year away from free agency, but Jacob Misarowski, who they just called up recently, has been absolutely dominating since getting called up, and Brandon Woodruff is coming back soon. So they have other options in the rotation, so maybe a deal could be had. Now, for the best fits, he mentions the Red Sox, Astros, Blue Jays, Cardinals, Diamondbacks, Padres, and the Orioles. Now, to me, excuse Draftnik Robbie, but I think the Red Sox would be a great fit here because they need someone else they can count on behind Garrett Crochet in the rotation. After Crochet, it's been very up and down, and they would have him for next year, and I imagine the Red Sox still want to compete next year. I think the Tigers could also be a good fit here. They're not mentioned as a best fit, but could you imagine a 1-2-3 of Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Freddie Peralta? That would go insane in the postseason. A couple other teams not mentioned here, maybe the Yankees. They could use another option behind Freedom Rodon, or the Dodgers. They've been having a ton of injuries in the rotation this year, and they have the prospects to get a deal done if they wanted to. At number 3, he has Sandy Alcantara. Now, it feels like he's been on the trade block for 84 years now, but I do wonder if he ends up getting moved to the deadline. Has struggled this year. ERA at a 6.69 has looked a bit better in his last few starts, but I wonder if teams maybe want to wait to see how he does in the second half, and then they can revisit talks in the offseason. As of right now, he gives the chance of a trade at 60%. For me personally, I'm going to go 50%. I really think it could go either way. Now, for the best fits, he has the Cubs, Astros, Red Sox, Blue Jays, D-backs, Dodgers, the Padres, and the Orioles. I think the Cubs would be a great fit. I love their pitching department there. I think they could do a good job of fully getting him back on track, and they need more upside in the rotation as well with Justin Steele out for the year. I think the Dodgers make sense. They've had a lot of injuries in the rotation, but would they want to take on another guy who's had Tommy John? The Padres, they've had some injuries in the rotation. I think that could make some sense as well. Could the Orioles be a sneaky candidate because they do plan on competing next year, so maybe they could look at him as the ace of their staff moving forward. At number 2 is Jarren Duran. Now, we got a report a little while ago the Padres have shown interest, and I was told personally from a little birdie that the Braves have at least kicked the tires on Duran, so I would imagine some other teams have gotten in on the mix as well. Now, with Duran, first off, why would the Red Sox want to trade him, who's coming off a good 2024 season, and he has 3 more seasons of club control? Well, his numbers are a bit down from last year, only hitting .257, a .311 on base, a .408 on the slugging, and 95 WRC+, but he is stealing a lot of bases still. He's one of the top guys when it comes to triples on the year, and they have Roman Anthony waiting in the wings for a full-time outfield spot. He's up with the team now. He's been playing some outfield, some DH too, but then they got Masataka Yoshida coming back to DH soon, so they're going to have a bit of a log jam, and I think Duran could possibly be the odd man out. But then I could also see some people thinking, well, why not Wilyer Abreu? But since Abreu has more club control and more power upside, I'm starting to think Duran could be more feasible to move, and the Red Sox would rather want to hang on to Wilyer Abreu. Now, for the best fits, he lists the Padres, the Braves, the Guardians, the Royals, the Giants, the Phillies, and the Mets. Now, to me, out of those teams, I think the Padres or the Braves make the most sense fit-wise because they have a need in left field, but I wonder if they have the right trade assets to get a deal done, so maybe they could get a third team involved. Now, he also mentions the Phillies and the Mets. I think that could be a pretty good fit as well, and they do have the prospects to get a deal done, but they both have a lot of lefties in their lineup already, so I wonder if that comes into play for one of those teams. I'll also throw in the Dodgers. He doesn't mention them here. Michael Conforto has been a bad pickup for them so far this year. They have younger players to trade, and that would would give them some more speed in the lineup. Now, overall, he gives a chance of a trade happening at 25%, but for me personally, I'm at 50% because they have Roman Anthony ready to take over out in left field and Masataka Yoshida ready to come back to be the DH. And at number 1, he has Alex Bregman. Now, point blank, I don't see this happening. He only gives a chance of trade at a 10%, but for me personally, I'm at a 0%. I think there's actually a better chance the Red Sox work out a long-term extension for Bregman after clearing off Rafi Devers' contract from the payroll. And Scott Boras said the other day that they are open to extension talks. Now, when it comes to the Red Sox and Bregman, I think they view him as more of a face of the franchise because he's been a good mentor to the young guys there. He's meshed well with the clubhouse since arriving in Boston. He talks with the media well. But most of all, this guy was hitting great with the Red Sox before going down with a quad injury. He is going to be back soon. Now, if the unthinkable were to happen, he does mention the Tigers, Cubs, Yankees, and the Mets as the best fits. To me, the Tigers or the Cubs would make the most sense since they went after him this past offseason, and he would be an upgrade at third base for them. As for the Yankees, yeah, that's not happening. And again, I think there's a 0% chance that he ends up getting moved, but like I always say never. But everybody, those are my thoughts on Jeff Passan's top 50 trade deadline candidates. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you think some of these are crazy? Do you think some of these are realistic? Let me know what you think down below in the comments. But everybody, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.